This is Kurt DeVille with
Powering
Counterpunch
on.
Boxing News, and I just gotta. This is for Bernard Hopkins. I know everyone is,
Ready to pair.
talking shit about Bernard Hopkins or whatever,
Powering off.
and because of some statements that he's made, concerning Canelo Alvarez, you know, um, I agree. Bernard Hopkins is the last person that should be advising Canelo not to fight Gennady Golovkin. Bernard Hopkins was a guy. He was the dark horse in the 160-pound division. He was the most. He couldn't get good ticket sales. He wasn't popular. You know what I mean? That wasn't really. He was a Showtime fighter, and he was once with Don King, and he broke free from Don King, and he fought a lot of. He was very controversial. Anybody that knows Bernard Hopkins, he's a good fighter. He's a slick fighter. He's an experienced fighter, but he is a dirty fucking fighter. You know what I mean? And but he's cut from that Philadelphia pedigree. They're known to be tough guys, and that's true. From their reputation and everything, and the stuff they do in the ring. However, when you're referring to when Bernard Hopkins talks about his career and his legacy, he fought a lot of bums. Okay, he fought a lot of guys like again William Joppy, Julio Cesar Green. You know what I mean? Keith Holmes. A lot of good fighters, but if you're a casual boxing fan, you won't know who the hell these guys are. In fact, he fought a fight with Antoine Eccles. You know what I'm saying? That's a name I haven't said in a long time. But he fought this kid like 3 times. That shows you when fighters start fighting the same guys, they start running out of guys that they could possibly match up with. He didn't get his breakthrough until he fought Felix Trinidad. You know what I'm saying? And then he upset Trinidad, in 2001, and right after 9/11. And that's when he started to get his recognition. And no one saw that coming at all. Everyone thought Trinidad was going to knock him out 5-6 rounds. He did a lot of mind games with Trinidad. He threw down the Puerto Rican flag in Puerto Rico. A fucking riot broke out. They had to fly him out, like real talk. They had to fly him out on a helicopter, to keep the Puerto Ricans from lynching him, you know what I'm saying, and tearing him from shred to shred, But all in all, he won that fight. And then that's when he started fighting better opposition, So before then, again, he wasn't the popular fighter. He didn't have the promotional background and the backing that Canelo has, and a lot of other fighters has. Think of it like this. What if Felix Trinidad had the same coward mentality that Canelo has been fed, Think about it. There wouldn't have been a Trinidad Hopkins. If Trinidad went from 154 and said, you know what, I'm going to 156. I'm going to go to 156. I'm going to make my weight class. And Hopkins doesn't deserve a fight with me because he hasn't fought anybody. You know what I mean? Like, just imagine Trinidad saying that. His fucking stock would have dropped. Trinidad wanted to fight the best, and he fought the best. Think about it. He fought everyone to Oscar De La Hoya to Roy Jones. Now, you imagine Trinidad doing some bullshit like that? Think about it. You know what I'm saying? You imagine him saying the things that Canelo Alvarez is saying now? 160-pound champions. What's the difference? Trinidad fought at 160 pounds. You know what I'm saying? It was a tournament that was set up, by Don King to see who the best middleweight was. It was kind of like the Super Six, but back in the day, back in 2001. And Hopkins came out victorious. Trinidad fought Joppy. Hopkins fought Holmes. And, of course, the 2 winners, which was Trinidad and Hopkins, fought. And Hopkins beat him, by TKO. And, they threw in the flag, the white towel, in the 12th round of that fight. You know what I mean? But again, Hopkins wasn't favored in that fight, just like Andre Ward wasn't. You know, but he was given the opportunity to fight. Why? Because he was fighting real fighters. He wasn't fighting divas. He wasn't fighting chicken shit cowards. He wasn't fighting people that think their shit didn't stink. You know, he wasn't fighting people that based fucking pay-per-view numbers on fighting ability. You know what I'm saying? You know, he was fighting real fighters. Trinidad was a real fighter. You know, Canelo Alvarez was once a real fighter. I think he's lost his way, you know, but Bernard Hopkins, of all people, should never tell and advise Canelo to stay at 155, to be a coward, you know, because that's something that he would never do. You know, if you hear Bernard Hopkins' statements and speeches and shit like that, the guy talks more shit than Jesse Jackson. You know what I'm saying? But what does he say? What he says makes a lot of sense in the sport of boxing. That's why I respect guys like Bernard Hopkins in the ring and the things that he does in the ring, because he takes the most dangerous fight. He didn't have to fight Kovalev. You know, he didn't have to fight Shuvanov. He could have fought the easier of the guys. You know, he could have fought anybody. He didn't have to fight fucking Kovalev. He could have fought Stevenson. You know what I'm saying? He could have fought Funfara. He could have fought anybody that wasn't as dangerous as Kovalev. But he made a statement. He said he ran towards the fire, not away from the fire. So that tells you one thing. If Bernard Hopkins has that type of mind and he believes in his own speeches and terminology, why would he tell Canelo Alvarez that you shouldn't fight Golovkin? You know, it sounds really contradicting, you know, when you think about it, because he's saying something that he would do in his career, but he's telling his fighter that he's promoting something totally opposite. But if you can remember, maybe 4 months ago, there was talks of Bernard Hopkins taking on Triple G, since no one wanted to fight him. So, of course, Bernard Hopkins would be saying that if he had minds of fighting Golovkin himself. See, Hopkins might be 50 fucking years old, but he's still a fighter. He's still a tough bastard. Make no mistake about it. And Bernard Hopkins is that guy that's known to upset that up-and-coming guy. Think about what he did to Tarver. Think about what he did to Pavlik. You know what I mean? He was, and these guys were on the up and up. Tarver knocked out Jones, right? He fights Tarver and beats Tarver's ass. Kelly knocks out Jermaine Taylor. He goes and fights Kelly Pavlik and whoops his ass, outschools him, demolishes this kid, puts on a boxing lesson, you know, picks that guy apart, right? So, yeah, it's biased. He's telling Canelo, the young bull, yeah, you can make money. Stay where the hell you're at, because he wants to fight Golovkin at 160. So if you ever see a fight that's been in talks, and if you see it come up again, you know, about Hopkins fighting Golovkin, it can be a reality, because you know sure as shit that Hopkins will get in there with Golovkin. If he'll get in there with Kovalev, he'll get in there with Golovkin. Think about it. So those things, these are the things that's biased in the sport of boxing. You know, that's the angle that Hopkins, that's why he's making statements like that. He's backing his boy to fight all these blown up welterweights, because he doesn't want him up there, you know, taking his glory. You know what I mean? Because if Canelo beats Golovkin, he won't have the chance to upset Golovkin. You know what I'm saying? Golovkin is at what, 17 title defenses? 16, 17? You know? Hopkins is at 20 title defenses. He doesn't want Golovkin to get past his record. And that's another thing. You know, he beat Carlos Monzon's record with 16 title defenses. He did that. So he set the bar at 20. Okay? But he wants to go down and offset GGG before he goes and breaks his record. And he's the most dangerous fighter. And he's the up-and-coming star. So he wants to offset all that shit in being Hopkins because he's that guy to do it. He's the comeback kid. He's like Keanu Reeves in movies. You know what I mean? He might do a shitty movie, then he might do a blockbuster. Then he'll do a shitty movie, then he'll do another blockbuster. That's exactly what Bernard Hopkins is in the sport of boxing. He might be old, but make no mistake about it. He still has the speed. He still has the skill. He might not be as fast as he was, but he's still tough as shit, and he has all the heart in the world. So don't fall into all this Hopkins shit, because Hopkins is selling a fight for himself. Make no mistake about it. And you've heard it here first from Kurt DeVille, Counterpunch Boxing News, and you've been counterpunched. Peace.